Kia ora. How you guys doing? So today we have a continuation of what we have explored um, the previous weeks, where we started with SecureS, a mediator. Today, we're gonna be exploring another library, and that one it's called the Fluent Validation. I'm just looking here the presentation. I uploaded that one. It just kind of just displaying a different position, but all good. And yeah, so we have this library that we're going to explore in isolation, so we can see how it works if you would like to start from scratch. And as a bonus, we're going to review if you were in the previous if you check the previous session. So we discussed secure as a mediator. But if you're not, I recommend that you have a look the previous session. So at least it's going to give you some introduction of how secure as a mediator works. And because after explaining how the fluent validation works, I'm gonna take the previous example and extend that one to introduce fluent validation. Um, with that, I think we can just get started and let's get going. So, well, tonight it's me. So again, if you don't know me, my name is Marcel Medina. I'm a software developer and Azure specialist. Also like a playground enthusiast and coder. I say that because I'm a co-founder of playgokids.com, which is a mobile app for families with kids. And I'm currently working as a lead developer in my food bag. And we look uh, everything that I'm exposing here, it's something that we explore as well. So that's why I feel uh, it's nice talking about that because it's really cool technology and libraries that allow us to do more. My blog is tech.playgokids.com. Right? I'm gonna go quickly on this one, and but this is a user group uh, where we get to do some coding and we learn by exploring, right? So when you see the community is a group of developers, I just highlighted that love coding and follow best practices. So this is a developer user group, right? So depending where you are in your career journey, you're gonna take advantage, learn from it. If you're a junior or even a most senior architect, right? So it's always good to, if you don't know, to learn, and if you know, maybe just review some concepts and explore the technology. Yeah, let's get started. So with the fluent validation, right? This is the agenda. This session shouldn't take that long. I reckon it could take maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, depending on questions and answers if we have it. But we're gonna explore just conceptually what's the fluent validation, steps to set up, how you can hook up this library to your solutions. I put demo on wheels because I'm gonna demo two parts: the quick starter, and the continuation of the previous session, right? Secure as a mediator in fluent validation. All right. So what's the fluent validation library? Right? It's a .NET library for building strongly typed validation rules. That that's basically it, right? So you can apply business rules on fields that you want to validate as soon as you get some requests, right, coming into your solution. I'm gonna put a demo where we're leveraging an API. So when we receive the request, we're going this library intercepts And based on the payloads, we're going to check if the fields, they match some rules, right? But what's nice about this library, because it provide like some benefits, right? So the fail fast principle, that stands for stopping the current operation, and as soon as an unexpected error occurs, right? That's the principle that comes like with fail fast. And this one, I put like a link here down, so you can explore this one later in more details. And also like this library, it shows like errors rather than exceptions. So you can validate, like, I reckon like it depends on your approach, on how you're going to implement your validation. You don't need like exceptions at all, but you could have it, but that would be like a design decision. But by default, it just, you have errors, right? In that like doesn't impact, doesn't have like any sort of performance impact on your solution. The rules are centralized on validators. So we have like this specific class that we call, that we created, that inherits from an abstract validator, one of the basic classes that the library provides. And with that, we start applying some rules, right? Like that some fields cannot, like, for example, cannot be nullable. They should be like greater, specific values, for example, could be greater than a number, for example. You could compare properties with properties and customize your messages. You can do that with this library. And also, like, what's cool is that it's unit testable, right? So you can validate your rules directly by creating unit testing on that. Uh, Regarding like to the steps to set up, I took like some screenshots in here. I reckon like if you get to see this video later on, you could just take like this screen and just to give you like some understanding of what needs to happen. But looking at here, first we need a NuGet package. So this one is called the Fluent Validation. I'm using, because I'm using Web API, I'm using the library .aspnet core. Right? So I'm just kind of putting here. After like you have like downloaded the library, uh, you need to hook that to your solution. On the demo, I'm using like a minimal API with .NET 6. And what it allows me to do is that on the same uh, initialization, right? I'm just like hooking the Fluent validation. This is only available because I'm using this library, right? With like the ASP.NET Core. But if I wasn't on a web API, I could just use a Fluent validation. There's only a library for that, but it doesn't provide that implementation that hooks onto the service collection, right? From ASP.NET Core. But because I'm using that, so that's why I have this. It's an easier implementation. So you can see here, I'm registering the validators. I could have like on this demo, on the demo, I'm gonna show one, but could have a multiple validators, right? To validate different modules where I'm hooking like the assembly. And one important topic in here is that I'm specifying that the automatic validation enable is false. If I don't do that, so what would happen is that it has like this library has some sort of interceptors where by submitting a request, and if you are using a specific model that leverages the validator, uh, the process would just intercept the request and would validate the model straight away, and that would raise errors. And because you wouldn't be able to handle that, you could have like exceptions being raised. What I'm saying is that rather than allow for the library to automatically validate, I'm just saying ignore. And then when the request comes, I'm going to validate that, okay, is this valid? Yes or not? Then I take an action, right? So looking here, the validator, it kind of seems like really small. Maybe if I put this one bigger or full screen, you're gonna see that on the item three validator, we have like the abstract validator base class, and I'm inheriting that, right? And then I'm specifying that I'm using like a product view model for it. Right? With that, we have some rules. I reckon like the quality is not that great, but just bear with me. I'm gonna show like on the demo as well. So we're gonna see how it works. And we also have the validation, right? So because I have set automatic validation enable to false, when it comes down for like the item 4 validation, I have a call like where I'm calling like validator dot validate async, and then I pass in the model. So with this option disabled, I can do that. And then it becomes more like, okay, is the validation valid? Yes or not? And the library like does pretty good job in returning error messages, right? I think like I'm gonna jump like straight like to the demo because I feel that by showing code we just get to understand better how it works, and then I can also play the solution here. Let me just share my screen. Um, grab this monitor. All right. So I'm bringing here like that's the code. Right? And this one, I'm gonna bring um, the article that contains the codes because then you can download and you can start playing. Let me just put in here because then I can share and you can have a look at that. Let me come like to the chat. Okay, okay. Let's come in here. All right. I just put like on the chat the link to the article that contains this code I'm sharing here right now. In there, there's a link to the repository. So you can take like a look maybe later after this session finishes and you can start coding and exploring. But like by looking at this implementation, right? So we just started like with the program, CS, and that's a minimal API. That's the hook, right? So that's where things are hooked up. Um, if I jump to, let's see, the validator itself in here, you're gonna see some interesting things, right? So we have like the abstract validator that takes a model. That's the product view model. If I open that, you're gonna see we have like just like name, SKU, quantity, and price. Right? So it's very simple model, but I'm ingesting that in validating field by field. So when I look at the, let's see here, the name, right? If I'm providing this model, I'm saying cannot be null, cannot be empty. And if there is an error, I display this message, right? Please specify a name. So I can uh, add like many validations, right, onto the same property. So I'm just concatenating multiple validations. For the SKU, cannot be null. No, cannot be empty. It needs to be a length between from 3 to 10. Right? If it's like lower than that, there will be like an error. I didn't put any custom message. So for that, we're gonna take like the error that comes back with the library. If you look like here, the quantity, right? The quantity is an integer. So I'm saying, yeah, it needs to be greater than or equal to 0 if you're gonna provide a number, right? Cannot be negative. And the price, I'm saying here, it cannot be 0, but only when the quantity is greater than 0. All right. So let's say I'm providing like a product, let's say milk, 1 unit. I need to provide a cost for that. So if I don't provide, I'm displaying this custom message. With a message, please specify a price. So you see here that's very straightforward to get going, right? And one of the important things to consider is that like the unit testable. I put in here, right? So I just created like uh, a new project with just like one using X units, and I do just doing like the validation of for the different fields, right? So here, like okay, I'm just put like a validation that should have errors when the name is null. So I put like a test for that, and I'm trying to uh, run this scenario because this could be one scenario where I provide this sort of value. Yeah, I say okay, validator, validate if the model is okay. In this case, I'm expecting that should be false. Right? It's not going to be valid and should contain errors. And the error message should be the one that we custom created. And then, and that's it, right? I hear like this queue. So it should have errors when this queue has not the minimal length. This queue here has 2 characters. The minimal length is 3. So I'm saying, okay, I'm arranging, I'm acting, and then I'm asserting that that should be false, right? And should contain the error. In here, that's the standard error that comes with the library. So it takes the property that you're validating and it says it must be between 3 and 10 characters. You enter 2 characters. So it's going to be very specific depending on the number of characters that you're providing. And I'm just comparing that, right? And like the quantity, like should have errors, the quantity is negative. If it's negative, that's the standard out of the box validation. The field must be greater than or equal to 0. That's the unit I provided. Or this one should have errors when quantity is greater than 0, but price is 0. So, so in here, right, I put like, okay, quantity is 1. This one should be greater than 0. So it should not, it should be false. It should display the message. And this one should succeed when all rules are satisfied. Right? If I get to run, in general, like I think it's a good exercise to think about testing first, right? And then like getting to run the solution. But you can see that everything here has passed, which means that uh, when I run my solution, that's going to work. Let's run this one. I reckon I have some breakpoints, so we should see what's happening. All right, so I got like my Swagger, and it's just like a post on the product. Right? If I try it out, let's say that, okay, as I mentioned, like I would say like a milk, I'm gonna force an error. characters rather than at least 3. When I execute that, so this has hit my controller, and I have like a single method for that. So the model is coming here, and I'm going to validate that, right? So when we look at here, we're having like that sort of here, the expected error that's coming. So is it valid? No, it's not. With that, what can we do? I'm just raising like a bad request and showing, okay, this is their codes, uh, like for whatever the grab the errors in here, like if they're not no, no and select validation result object. This object just contains like a code, property name, and message. If I return that one, right? So you're gonna see that's a bad request, and it contains like the information that I'm just displaying. Right? So that would like prevent uh, requests coming like in persisting that sort of information onto your like if you have like a database or to start a process, right? If you have some business other rules or other integrations, so you would just prevent from things from happening, right? That's the purpose of this library. I reckon like from here, like you definitely like good to go, right, with this solution, and that's just a start. And by exploring more, you could introduce like more complex validations. On the blog itself, I put like links to Fluent Validation because they have like a very like a comprehensive documentation on the library, and they have like other scenarios where you could create like custom validations. Like rather, on this example, I was relying on the out of the box what comes with the library. But if you want to create a completely custom one, you could. Right? And the library is very flexible to allow you to do that. With that, I'd like just to go back to the slides. Let me bring it back to this. And let's go with the bonus. All right. So in here, all right, if you are not like in the previous session, I highly recommend you to check what was discussed previously with CQRS and MediatR. So there was like um, an exploring, and we had we had like an initial solution for you to get going and understand the pattern. And one of the topics with the MediatR is that we have pipelines with MediatR. And with those pipelines, what we can do, we can hook some validations. Or in this particular scenario, well, what I'm doing, like because we're hooking the Fluent validation, um, I'm leveraging a validation behavior that the library provides. I just take like this screenshot, but you can see that it's called like an interface called iPipeline behavior. And what it does is that before like it gets to do the operation, it triggers validation in with well, it triggers like the pipeline. The pipeline triggers something that you put in there. Right? It could be logging. Right? So if you want to call before and after the method, let, 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 let's say you have more like a wrapper with this pipeline, right? Because you can intercept something that before the main action happens or after. Right? So that's what the pipeline allow you to do it. I put like a screenshot in here that shows, okay, I'm implementing iPipeline behavior, and there's like a method called handle. And when it comes in here, you can see that I'm trying to run like a validation based on, well, you can see that the last line I have await next. The next would be the action itself that gets triggered on mediator, right? That we explained in the previous session. But before we reach next, we have a validator. We're hooking up the Fluent validation here. Right? In this particular case, I'm raising an exception. But because I'm raising an exception, I have a handler to take care of this exception, right? I'm gonna go like with go back to the codes. Let me share my screen here. There's another repository for the codes I have in here. I'm gonna put it in share like very, just just hang with me. I have like this one. I don't have like an article for it, but I have the repository link. So you could have a look at this new implementation of SecureS. Let me just copy that. And I'm gonna put like on the chat. And I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Just a minute. So I just put like on the chat another link. And let me see here. Let me share my screen. All right. So this is on the previous solution. We had it on wheels now, leveraging Fluent Navigation. But what has changed? Right? So the same thing we discussed when like for the quick start, it was applied in here, but leveraging mediator. Let's go and have a look at the program, ICS. If you look in here, if you get to compare with the previous example, because I took the previous one and extended, we're gonna see we have like a handler, an exception handler, which is a singleton, right? So it's basically a single instance of the exception handler. So when exceptions raised from the validations, I have like this singleton that's going to be able to, uh, well, it's combined with the middleware. Right? So I have this middleware that allows me to have like a singleton that gets executed as part of the ASP.NET Core pipeline. Right? So that's called middleware. And I'm doing like a global handler exception for that. I can jump in here, but I'll jump in this one later because I think that's definitely an extra. If you're looking like a global exception handling, that's how you do it, right, with .NET 6. Uh, but you can see here, I'm taking like the Fluent validation and doing something that's very similar. Right? One of the things in here is that because I'm not using the module on the request itself, right? Like, because it's different, right? With mediator like does the middle field communication between what's the controller and the handler, right? So it's decoupled. So I don't have the same uh, uh, flag, right, as before, right? So this one I'm just leaving as is. But when it comes down to the hook, you can see here we have this add product module, which is an extension of the service collection. Let me go into that. Maybe if I zoom in, I don't know if that's help. And So before, we didn't have those two lines. We had only the mediator, but that was added. So we have we're hooking a new instance that's going to be on request. So a transient instance where I'm hooking two pipeline behaviors, one for logging, the other one for validation. Right? I mentioned about the logging, right? But what the logging is doing is something very simple. I implement the iPipeline behavior, but you see here, like you have the next, this is the action. What I'm doing is just logging before and after, as simple as that. Right? So that's how you can intercept or validate, do like validation, or do any sort of logging before the execution happens. Right? That's the beauty of Mediator. Like that's the for this pipeline. And we have the validation behavior. Let's have a look at this one. That's the important one. Same pipeline, right? And handle. I think I forgot like two commas here. Should be only one. Just ignore that. But I'm doing a validation before things happen. All right. So is there like, because that's hooked up against the assembly? So for all the validators I have, check if there are any failures. Right. With that, I validate and I raise this exception. By raising this exception, the global handler is gonna deal with it. Right? And with that, I reckon like we can just carry on. Let's just play the solution and then you're gonna see that working. Let me put like some breakpoints in here so we know like where we are. Right? So let's see. This is going are gonna run like the create because I have like this hooked up for the request DTO. Yeah, in here I'm using the DTO itself just to transition objects. I'm not like bothering too much with like the different, um, let's say the nomenclature, right? In general, like you would have like a view model, and then like you would kind of go to different layers of your solution and have like a maybe a data transfer object. I'm just having like everything all the way, just for the example. But if you look in here, right? So I just have like a name, SKU, quantity, price, same as the other example. If you look like the DTO itself, we have two. That's the request, and we have like a fatter product DTO, right? That contains ID and the data created, the dates. Right? But I have the request. The only thing that matters for me is just that. Right? And we have the validators. So let's see this one. Have like the deletes as well. But by looking at this, you can see, okay, so for this command, so we have like the secure S, the command. I'm putting like a validator for that. And when the command gets to be validated, I'm checking, okay, for the product request DTO name, I'm applying the same validations as on the previous example. Right? But this one is hooked up to the command, right? To add or update product command. Does the same thing, right? And I have the delete as well, right? Which is just like a single validation of the SKU. Cannot be null nor empty, and it should be like the length between 3 to 10. With that, I think we can play the solution. Let's do that. Right, it's coming. And we have the swagger. As in the previous example, we had like the whole CRUD's notification with mediator. Let's create like a product, right? And let's try this one. Same example, should behave exactly as before, although on the handler, I'm injecting more details. Right? Let's put milk. Right? Let's execute this one. So it got called like this is the controller. What's gonna do is gonna call the commands, and then we have like a notification. I'll explain on the previous session. Let me go into this one on the commands. Maybe zoom out, although it's not gonna be great. We have the commands, right? Because we're doing an add or update, and this one is gonna happen. I, I don't have any validation here. Right? On the previous quick starter, we had like the validation if it's valid. What's gonna happen is that the pipeline, well, this one is gonna be trigger. The pipeline is going to uh, start before, so we would have a chance of intercepting before the execution happens. Right? So that's why I don't have the flag. I don't need it. Right? But if you look in here, I have like some mapping. I we have like a future session to talk about like mapping, how we can do that more fluently. So you can see here, right? So if it's an existing product, I'll update things. I'm doing everything here in memory, but I'm mapping, do sort of this mapping of DTOs from to, right? In here the same. So it's really noisy. You see a lot of stuff. There are better ways of doing that. So we have like a future session arranged for AutoMapper. Have a look and maybe like you just uh, attend like that session if you want to learn a little bit more about it. Uh, let's just run this one. So I'm gonna continue on that. It's gonna trigger the validator, right? So that's the pipeline. So the pipeline is being triggered like before. So that one wasn't triggered at all, right? Not yet. So the pipeline came before. It's gonna do the validation. Well, do we have like any validators? If yes, it's gonna do like the checks. Do we have any failures? Yes. Let's see like on this one, this validation exception. I think this one's the out of the box. I implemented like the handler, not the exception. That's gonna be throw, right? So the interceptor, the middleware, that's the one that was custom like created. But you can see like this is a middleware on .NET Core, on ASP.NET Core. And well, you can see here that what it does, it invokes an execution, but because that has failed, I'm handling the exception now. Right? Well, I'm just getting like a status code. I put like a, you'll be able to explore this in detail. I decided to put like a 422 that's unprocessable like entity that it's a custom like here rather than returning 500, being like very more specific. And then I'm just dealing how I'm handling the exception and how I'm going to return back to the Swagger. Let's trigger this one. So it just came back, right? So we have like more details. I put like as many details as we could. You could have like a more succinct here, like if you want to provide very detailed, that's the one. Okay. So, but you can see that the product request queue must be between 3 to 10 characters. You enter two, right? And let's say now we're gonna submit something that works, right? Because beauty of pipeline that we're gonna validate first, and then Fluent Validation is not gonna raise any exceptions, and then we just proceed with the execution. Let me execute this one. All right, this timer, well, we're still gonna have like the pipeline. So it's gonna come in here. And it's gonna do like the validation. All right, do we have any failures? No, the count is 0. All right, so it's going to just to continue with the execution, which is next. That's the implementation. That's the delegates. And then it comes down. Okay, we're going to create. Is this like an existing one? Yeah, it is an existing one. So just fine. This one is just a case of updating. Grab the index because it's in memory, right? So I grab the product. Then I'm, well, massaging or translating the variables like with the name, the SKU, quantity, price. It was before it was exactly, I think it was exactly the same. Now we have price 10. So I'm updating that, right? So, okay, now it's 0. And that's it. I'm putting back to the same place on the array where it was. Right? And we should have like a 200. Right? This is it. I guess if you are coder like me, just stay and continue like exploring. We're gonna have like this week. It's a pretty like busy week. I don't know if you're across, but like on the meetup, we have like other 2 meetings. Right. So what's happening? I don't know if you guys are aware, but I'm gonna put in here globalazure.net. I'm just inviting you guys, if you're like on the Azure stack, using like the Azure services. So there will be like this global Azure event, but you can see here the number. It's gonna happen like between May on 5th, which is like Thursday to Saturday, and they have like 378 speakers and sessions. Yeah, it's pretty full on. Like there are lots of topics. I invite you to have a look. I'm gonna be presenting some sessions on that, and on Thursday, presenting about um, how you migrate your ARM template to Bicep. With like Azure, you have a if you're doing like AWS or if you're using like Terraform, Azure has its own uh, way of mapping the resources, right? So it used to be an ARM template. Now Microsoft is pushing like to Bicep. So there's another implementation. So if you have like legacy ARM templates, um, have a look at this session. There is some sort of planning and a structured way of how you can go like from an existing implementation onto a validation process and get like to production, right? So that's a very comprehensive one, and recommend you to have a look if you're interested in learning about that on DevOps. And on Saturday, I have like another session where I'm gonna show creating professional real world Azure functions. That's a kind of wow, a big thing. Like I just put like that on purpose, just to drive some attention because uh, there are lots you can do with Azure, right? And how you implement it, that's the key part of leveraging like the benefits or the underlying platform, right? So we're gonna talk about that during the demo. That's happening on Saturday. I know like it's not at night. On Saturday it's gonna happen at 2 p.m. So if you are available in the afternoon, have a look. If you're not, then just check later. Right? But yeah, it's just like under the Azure space. With that, I don't know if you have any questions. And apparently not. I can see that you guys kind of following. Seems like kind of straightforward. But if you have like questions during the week, please post like on Meetup, and then just get back and get to check like any sort of questions, or maybe if you need to deep dive or talk more about it, then we can do that. Right. With that, I appreciate you guys coming, and well, talk to you soon. Next time on Thursday. Cheers. Have a good night.